All right, what's up, guys? Happy Wednesday. We have a beautiful 11 game slate going on today. Chuck and Nick to bring you here. Hopefully, some fantasy goodness. Nick, how we doing?
Good man. Yeah, beautiful is one word for it. A lot of news still to break on this one, so I'm expecting chaos for sure.
And we have an early question from Jose Morales, and it's a good question because I was going to get into this right at the beginning. What teams are we picking on today? So, for some reason, there's like three games that are very interesting. Not even counting the Lakers. I don't know if Anthony Davis is going to sit. I kind of lean towards he's sitting just based on the line, but we want to target the Pelicans versus Washington with Zion out. Uh, Toronto, it's kind of just underpriced across the board. I was really surprised how much Toronto I was getting in my lineups against Atlanta. And
Yeah.
then Milwaukee, Indiana, once again has like the highest total in NBA history or whatever. So, any thoughts there, Nick?
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. All those spots are very appealing. Obviously, the Lakers news could change some things. I think value's going to open up there. Again, you mentioned it. 3 point spread against the Spurs, who've been historically bad this season. That's not right. Someone knows something. So, yeah, definitely Toronto against Atlanta. Really, really like the Pels now that Zion's out. And yeah, you can't ignore a near 260 implied total in that Bucks game. That's crazy.
Yeah, it kind of feels like in the Laker game anyway. It kind of feels like LeBron and AD are sitting right.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to handicap it here, and it's like even if they're out, like you have to figure it's going to be a competitive game if they have everyone else in. I don't know. I mean, it is a road game. The Lakers did seem a bit hungover their last game coming out of the in-season tourney, but I don't know. I just think you can't handicap them here if they're healthy. It just doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. I mean, we have a large slate, so let's just go ahead and dive right in. It's super interesting, and me and Nick were talking about this before the stream started. That the top of value today on DraftKings, anyway, it's all centers. I mean, Brooke Lopez, just the model loves Brooke Lopez, and I would love to know like specifically why. But I mean, he's in a great spot against Indiana. Jakob Pertl, he's definitely just too cheap. Jonas Valanciunas, CJ McCollum. I mean, there's no Zion. These guys look great. The one that's super interesting to me is Yusuf Nurkic showing up this high, and along the lines of the Suns, Devin Booker and KD, like Devin Booker specifically, is showing up so high on the model, and we're expecting the Suns to be to have their big three tonight. So, just a couple interesting spots. Is there anything else that stood out to you immediately?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird with the Suns. Like, I'm not really getting to them much, but I do think we're seeing them a little higher than expected because they have secondary guys still out, in Grayson
Mhm.
Allen and Josh Okogie. Those are two guys that usually play around 30 minutes. So I guess the model's just kind of adjusting for that. So even though the big three's back, we know Beal's somewhat limited. Um, I don't know. That's just me kind of justifying where the model's at. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Jaime Jaquez is definitely interesting to me. We did get news that Josh Richardson is out for the Heat here. Still no Hero or Bam. Um, so yeah, even if that game were to blow out, I think Jaquez would be on the floor, and I imagine it's probably going to actually be pretty competitive. Um, Maybe that's the spot we're overlooking. I know we kind of highlighted our favorites, but I mean, Orlando Robinson's a guy I know we've both liked with Bam out. He's been kind of boomer bust, but that's what you're looking for in tournaments. And then with no Richardson, that should not only solidify minutes for Lowry, but also increase the upside of someone like Jaquez. So Miami's a spot I'll be looking. Going to keep an eye on ownership, but not surprised to see Jaime kind of back in our lives after he's been out of them for a few slates.
Yeah, especially over on FanDuel, 5,500 at 9% ownership, showing up as pretty great value on the model when like the rest of the value everyone's getting to, other than Nurkic and I guess Giannis is kind of tough to get to, just lack of value. But I think we're going to get some value from the Laker game. We'll have to see
Oh yeah,
specifically who. Hopefully, we get that by the end of the stream. But Hawkes, even on DraftKings 5,700, I think he's going to look pretty good tonight too.
yeah.
It's just, I mean, top of the model, three guys stand alone today, and it's like Giannis at the very top, and then we have Joel Embiid and Tyrese Halliburton, kind like right after him, and then it's kind of just everybody else, and these guys are all coming in for crazy low ownership. So before the season, if I asked you what would Tyrese Halliburton's max price be this season, would you have even said over 10K?
I mean, maybe 10-5. I mean, I've always been high on Halliburton. I wouldn't say 11K. I know that much. But yeah, I mean, I kind of compared him like a Trey Young. I guess I imagine he could get somewhere in that range, but he's in Luca range now with this
Mm-hmm.
price. So definitely exceeding even my high expectations for him.
I mean, it's a 259 total. Like, what are we even doing? The first huge total, it beat it by like 40 points against the Hawks. The last time these two teams played, I think they did go under, but Vegas has it right back at 259. So these two teams, like this, I think this is such an important thing, even though it's a huge slate, and I'm
Yeah.
not quite sure who exactly we want to target other than Brooke Lopez. These guys are coming in for pretty low ownership across the board.
Yep, yep. And yeah, I mean, they played that extra game because of the in-season tournament, so we have a little bit more data on this matchup than we do most matchups in the NBA right now. And yeah, we've seen huge games out of Dame, huge games out of Giannis, huge games out of Halliburton. So all the stars have been going off. Um, Indiana is a little bit healthier than they were, I think, last week, but there's still no Nemhard, which actually makes McCollum maybe an interesting value play. Obviously, Sumner's coming off the bench. But he's been heavily involved in this matchup, even with Nemhard in there. So he's someone I might be looking at as a value piece. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to like here. Like just looking at what these teams have done against each other, big fantasy scores. And I know it's tough to ever click Giannis at this price with Dame in the lineup. But if there was ever a matchup to do it at reasonable ownership, I think this might be it.
Well, let me ask you, who are your two favorite plays from each team in this matchup?
I mean, including Halliburton and Giannis. I mean, um, yeah, I mean it's Halliburton and Giannis first, but
Mhm.
I don't know. I guess I like Dame on FanDuel. I don't love the DK price, but I do like Middleton on both sites. I think he's kind of priced where he should be, but we're seeing a few extra minutes for him lately. I think when he's getting his full run in a matchup like this, he'll probably be priced closer to 7K. So I'll go with him as my second buck. And then over on the Pacers, I mean, yeah, it's a little bit risky, but I think it might be McConnell just because we are lacking value, especially at guard tonight. It's really tough to find someone to pay down for there. So I like that. I mean, even if he only plays 22, 23 minutes, we know he's a pretty solid fantasy point per minute player. He hasn't been playing 20 minutes consistently. So that gives me some pause. But again, with Nemhard out, it's a shot I'm willing to take unless we get some value to open up at guard, in which case I might not get to him. But right now, the way things stand, one of my favorite value pieces, and it doesn't seem like the field's really getting there at all. So
And we talked about this on the previous stream, I think, where McConnell plays an hour after lock, but we should have some more news by then. So even if we have McConnell in our lineups,
yeah,
I mean, I'll be fine running him if we get to that game with nothing changing. But I kind of think that something is going to pop up specifically from the Lakers.
yeah,
Uh,
they lock at the same time, so that's like a great placeholder to have. So if you have McConnell in, you can kind of move over to some safer value from that Lakers game if things do open up as we expect.
I like it. And just two other guys I want to mention. Malik Beasley showing up as pretty good value on DraftKings, 54, 5,600. He's kind of volatile. He has to hit a bunch of threes to get there, but he's been doing very well in his role. And again, we haven't projected for 36 minutes, which seems insane.
Yeah,
But 4 and 1% ownership, I don't mind it. The interesting one to me, though, is Isaiah Jackson is still coming in for almost double digit ownership on both sides, 41, 4,200 off the bench. I mean, he had a really good game against the Lakers. Is that something? Is this a spot that you're going to get to today?
I mean, I kind of like it. You get power forward eligibility on FanDuel where he's 4,200. I think the reason he had the good game against the Lakers is because Carlisle decided to run a bigger rotation with him. Who's their other backup big? There's another guy in the rotation usually who's been out. I can't remember his name.
Jalen Smith.
Yeah, Jalen Smith. So Jalen Smith's been out. So a lot of the time, I mean, they're running a smaller rotation with the second unit in those minutes without Turner, but we're seeing more minutes in matchups like this. Again, I think the Bucks are comparable in terms of size. Like you're dealing with Giannis and Lopez here. Portis off the bench, another big player. So I think Jackson should be relied on. I don't know. Maybe he gets 17, 18 minutes, but that could be enough for him to hit value at 4,100 on DK, 42 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't projected for 17, so if he gets, I don't know, even just 20 minutes, it seems pretty great. And I
Yeah,
don't mind it at the low ownership. What's up, Ken? Appreciate you being here every day. Let's go. Um, so going back to the top of the mall, let's go ahead and jump into the guards here.
let's do it.
So of course, Tyrese Halliburton alone at the top, followed by Devin Booker, Brandon Ingram, Trey Young, Dame, CJ McCollum. We already talked about we're interested in Tyrese Halliburton and Brandon Ingram due to Zion being out. Is there anything else near the top of the model here that you want to get to more than the field today?
Yeah, I mean, obviously McCollum's going to look really good now. Before we had that news, I was very heavy on Jalen Brunson over on FanDuel. I know there's some blowout risk in this matchup with Utah. I think he's still going to be popular here. Just a misprice on him. 7,800 really doesn't make any sense to me. Looking at other guards towards the top, probably not going to get to a ton of Booker with all these guys coming back for the Suns. Scotty Barnes having point guard eligibility is interesting to me on DK. I mean, point guard's usually a deep position, but I wouldn't mind using McGuard tonight. Not drawing as much ownership as I think he should. I think the other Toronto starters are a little bit cheaper, so he's someone I want to get to over there. And then one last play is Terry Rozier. Obviously, we're never excited to play guys against Miami, but this is not your regular Miami. They're very thin right now. Obviously, no Bam, who's really the anchor of that defense, really changes kind of the look of that entire team on the defensive end. So I'm liking getting to Terry Rozier. He's been playing as many minutes as anyone in the league with LaMelo out of the lineup. I know he's somewhat inconsistent, but in tournaments, sub 10% on both sides, I think he makes a lot of sense.
I love it when we're on the same page about stuff we didn't even talk about pre-stream. Yeah, Terry Rozier. Like
Let's go.
I was interested in him last time just because of the price and his role. I was a little bit turned off by this. I think they played Miami last time, right? So it's the same
Yeah.
matchup,
Mhm.
and I was a little turned off by it. But he put up like 60, so
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
mind going right back to him at really low ownership. And then Scotty Barnes. I'm super interested in Scotty Barnes specifically on DraftKings, like you mentioned, the point guard eligibility, but just every other Raptor, not every other Raptor, but like Schroeder, OG, Pirtle, they're all pulling so
We're all
much
chalk. Yeah.
ownership. And so Scotty Barnes, he's not like low owned, 16% is still pretty heavy on this large of a slate, but it feels like a little bit of leverage off those guys. I think we can play Scotty in the same lineup with one, maybe even two of those other guys. It's just a question of, are we running anyone on Atlanta back? DeAndre Hunter's out today. And so we'll have to see. Bogdanovich hit like 10 threes in the last game or something. We're
Yeah.
not expecting that again. And he's at max price. So I don't know that I'm going to, I mean, I didn't want to get to him last time. I'm probably not going to get to him today. But there's definitely spots in this game that we're going to be interested in.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
And Swerve in the chat, Scotty and Schroeder revenge game. Atlanta doesn't play defense, so both viable. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. Where's Schroeder on value? Yeah, number 3,
Yeah.
32 and
He's up there.
21% ownership. I mean, the price seems appropriate, and so I don't mind that spot at all.
I like it. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, I'm just sorting through value now, looking at these guards. I mean, Schroeder's popping everywhere. Like, he's going to be popular, but I think at his price, he makes a lot of sense. I think in low risk and cash games, he's probably your first guard in most builds. Obviously, followed by CJ McCollum, drawing much more ownership on DK, almost 1K cheaper, but I think at 8,200 on FanDuel, you're fine getting to him over there as well.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I probably can't get to Kyle Lowry here. I was initially thinking with Richardson out that might secure minutes for him, but I think that just opens things up for some of the guys coming off the bench more. Um, really enjoyed some of the Lowry games we've got with Hero and Bama, but he's super inconsistent. And yeah, I guess the field's kind of echoing that. So I wouldn't mind getting to a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I'd much rather just pay 200, 300 more for Schroeder.
I agree, and a lot of times I'm going to prefer the lower owned guy, but this isn't one of those.
Yeah,
This isn't one of
yeah.
those times. Jeremy Sochan also showing up very near the top of value. So we thought the point Sochan experiment was over, and then Pop went right back to it the next game. Sochan still had a bad game. They're playing the Lakers. His price is probably a little bit too cheap, and he was popping a lot in my lineups. I'm kind of surprised that his ownership is as low as it is. I was expecting to be a little bit higher. Despite the large slate, but we haven't projected for 32 minutes at 18% in a game where possibly there's no AD or LeBron. So I don't mind getting to Sochan a bit. We mentioned Beasley and Middleton. Buddy Hield is in that huge total game. I don't mind taking him as a GPP shot.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
OG Anunoby, we already mentioned him and Schroeder, probably the two best plays from Toronto in terms of just points per dollar. Jalen Brunson. It's awesome when the model agrees with what we're thinking before we really go through it. And so, is there anyone else from the top, or I guess near the top of the model value, that you want to mention?
Let's see here. I mean, you mentioned Healed. I think especially on FanDuel at 5,800, he makes a lot of sense. Kind of surprised he's not more popular than he is. Um, I mean, it's not an exciting play, but I think Colin Sexton's a little bit cheap for what you could get out of him in terms of upside. I imagine that rotation's still pretty thin for Utah right now. Looks like they might get Lauri Markkanen back tonight, but still no Jordan Clarkson. That should secure at least a few extra minutes for Sexton. Again, kind of boomer bust. There's certainly some risk there, but we have seen games where he's getting well over 30 fantasy points. So at his price, just over 5K, I don't think it's entirely safe. Probably wouldn't do it in low risk, but in large field tournaments, I do think he makes a lot of sense in that late game. And if you have him in there, he also provides that flexibility that we're definitely looking for on this slate. So if you have Sexton as a placeholder and things start to open up, it's very easy to use that spot to maybe move on to some better value. But I think as far as placeholder goes in the late games, he makes a lot of sense.
And while we're on Utah, my boy Keontae George. So for a while, he's been at this price, and he's been a good price because his median outcome, like his median projection, is right around a 5x on the
Yeah.
6K price. And he actually showed us a pretty good ceiling last game. I think he had 30 real life points.
Yeah.
And he's like the direct pivot off of Schroeder. Now, I don't think that we have to pivot off Schroeder, but if you're trying to find just a lower owned piece to get to, if you're playing maybe like OG and Scotty Barnes are in that lineup, I don't think Keontae George is a bad choice. Now, they're playing New York. It's a little bit tougher of a defensive matchup, but I don't mind getting to him at these ownerships.
No, I think that's a good call. Definitely. And
Uh,
again,
Caleb,
go ahead.
I was gonna say Caleb Martin is the other guy that I was interested to hear your take on because I said I didn't like him, and then he put up another 40 burger. So what are we doing with Caleb Martin?
Yeah, I mean, in my head, he's a forward, so I guess I wasn't really thinking of him yet. But I mean, you look at what he's been doing, and it's tough to argue with. I mean, he's probably going to start here. Should see safe minutes with Richardson out, and I think his twin brother, even though he's not playing, is on the roster for the Hornets. So there's at least some slight narrative there. This is a favorable matchup for Miami against a pretty soft defense. So at the price, I'm not like eager to play him, but I think if you're landing on him, he makes sense at this price. I mean, he's been consistently hitting value, and what more can you really ask for? Like, it kind of feels like Exum. Like, I don't want to be playing 6,400 for Caleb Martin, but when you really sit back and look at what he's been doing lately with the extra usage he's getting with your own Bam out of the lineup, I mean, it's tough to argue with the results.
And along the lines of Caleb Martin, Duncan Robinson is not a bad GPP play at 4 and 6%. His price might seem a little bit high, but he has shown us a ceiling multiple
Yeah,
times this season, and it's a really good matchup against Charlotte. Especially if we're running Terry Rozier in our lineup, it's not a bad thing to get someone on the other side. Just scrolling down, I mean, Gary Trent is pulling 18 and 11% ownership. I don't hate it, but I think I would still rather just pay a little bit more for OG and Dennis Schroeder. And I like Gary Trent. I think like last year anyway, he was a really good GPP play a lot because he really had a ceiling. He hasn't shown it this year, but in this total game against Atlanta, if there's ever a time for him to have a huge game, it's this one. But I don't like chasing that ceiling game when a lot of the field is also getting there. So I'm a
yeah.
little hesitant to get there, but I don't hate it.
Yeah, I got one more for you. A little bit of narrative here. I have to shout out my Nets a bit. I mean, Cam Thomas, hilarious quote in his rookie year when they had Harden and KD on the team. He's like, I'm already a better scorer at this age than both of these guys. Just like talking tons of crap, which I love. But KD was like a mentor to him. Like, there's no like bad blood here or anything. Thomas, since he's been back from his injury, has not been good. The main reason for that is he's actually been seeing decent defense from some of these matchups, surprisingly against the Wizards. I don't know what that is, but the issue more than anything is that he's not getting to the foul line. I think here in this matchup where he's going to be seeing a lot of Booker Beal in the backcourt, some Eric Gordon, and he's going to be a little extra motivated to maybe get to the rack with KD down there. I don't think it's insane. Like, the price is heavy. Like, he's not a first piece in, but in tournaments, nobody's going to want to play him looking at his game logs. And I do still think he has some upside. FanDuel only 6,300. Bit of a homer pick. I'm admittedly biased here, but I think if he could start to get to the foul line again, it's really going to open up his game all of a sudden. And you're going to want to be ahead of that curve, not behind it. Because if he starts hitting 40 fantasy points a game again, that price is going to climb really quick. So I don't know. Again, it's a dart. Don't do it in low risk or cash or small field contest, but large field at low ownership, I think it makes some sense. And again, it's another piece from these late games where you have that flexibility if you need it, if we do get some of this news to break after lock.
Oh, I love the 6,300 price for Cam Thomas over on FanDuel. And then I also want to mention Spencer Dinwiddie. I was pretty interested in
Yeah.
him. Even the 7,300 on DraftKings at 2% ownership. I mean, it's not an easy matchup against the Suns, but I'll take some shots there. And 6,800 on FanDuel. It's a good price. He's pulling some more ownership. But yeah, Cam Thomas, 6,300. It's just the potential for his ceiling games. I mean, be a game early. You know, if he puts up 45 tonight, he's going to be 20 plus on the next slate.
Yep, and more narrative here too, and maybe we could use this to transition into forwards if you want. But Cam Johnson and Bridges are very much beloved by this Suns crowd. I think we're going to see a video tribute to Mikal Bridges tonight. And I mean, all that crap aside, they're kind of priced reasonably in a decent matchup. Not going to be very popular given the games that we're targeting that we've already talked about. So there is some narrative here for both these guys. I think Bridges especially super. Well liked in terms of Phoenix. So I could see him having a good game here at a very low ownership.
Yeah, I mean Bridges and Cam Johnson. So Bridges more so than Cam Johnson, but these are two guys I'm over the field on basically every single
Nice.
time they play.
Yep. Yep.
And I like the narrative. I kind of forgot about that. And so if you need any more reason to play two already really good GPP plays,
Yeah,
there you
yeah.
go.
It's just icing on the cake. Like I'm never making plays just because of narrative, but like they're already low owned at a reasonable price and a good matchup. So again, I think this is a competitive game. The Suns are on a back to back, which should kind of level things out a bit with this being a road game for the Nets. So yeah, no reason not to like them here.
And I mentioned this before, if you guys out there want to play narratives, I think it's okay to give 5%, birthday narrative, revenge narrative,
Yes, a little
uh,
boost. Yeah, yeah,
the garden narrative when guys are playing in New York. Like, don't I wouldn't do more than 5%, but I think 5% is okay.
that's a good
And
point.
other forwards, we already mentioned we like Giannis, we like Brandon Ingram. Jimmy Butler's kind of interesting against Charlotte. It's a tough price point to get to today. I'm more interested in the other guys, slightly more expensive and slightly cheaper than him. And then we have a question in the chat. Did we touch on the Lakers stud? So it kind of feels like the line. So I'm assuming that Anthony Davis is sitting. We don't have any kind of confirmation. That's just my pure guess. But based on the line being so close against one of the worst teams in the NBA, the Spurs, I kind of think LeBron could sit tonight too,
Yep.
which would be disappointing because we were going to get, Wembanyama versus LeBron, the old versus the new, whatever. But Wembanyama showing up this high in the model. And I've talked about Wembanyama as a really good GPP play. Sometimes he's going to give us less than 40. Sometimes he's going to give us close to 60. And I don't think his ownership, I thought he was 8,900 on FanDuel. He's 9,900 on FanDuel. So that's going to be a tough price point. 8,800 on DraftKings seems reasonable, though. And that's
Yep.
reflected in the 18% ownership.
I like it. And I mean, the thing about FanDuel is where you're getting extra points for blocks and steals. He can hit value at that price, and we have seen it on more than one occasion. So if AD is out, this matchup gets a lot softer. I don't know. I don't mind taking a few flyers on him, especially on DK, where he's more than 1K cheaper.
Yeah, it's like if AD's out, I'm assuming that the Ham has to go with Jackson Hayes over Christian Wood in the starting lineup. It just Christian Wood's basically out of the rotation. Hayes is still seeing a few minutes basically every game.
Yep.
And with no Zach Collins, Victor Wembanyama's rebounding rate has skyrocketed. And so, especially in this game environment, if he's going up against Jackson Hayes, it's a really good spot for Wembanyama. But
Yeah.
we'll hopefully get that news. And I don't know, we have about 25 minutes till we get out of here. Hopefully, we get that before we're done. Who else from the top here? We talked about Scotty. I really like Julius Randle. Pascal Siakam seems like a decent pivot too. Laurie Markkinen's going to be back. Mikhail. I mean, there's a lot of good options here. Who else should we be focusing on though?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jimmy on FanDuel, you can play him at either forward position at 8,600 makes a lot of sense. Obviously, again, Hero and Bam are out. I think the DK price is a little bit tougher to get through, just not as much flexibility over there. I'm with you on Randall. He's going to be super popular here, but he's been about as consistent as anyone in the AK range. Ingram, a core play for me on both sides with Zion out, even more so than McCollum. But I think we're seeing that reflected in the ownership. We've just seen his rates really climb dramatically with Zion out of the lineup. I think we continue to see that here. And this is actually cheaper than he's been since I think he's returned from injury. So not the time to lower his price, but we can take advantage of that even at high ownership. Um, Other than that, I mean, Markkinen's back tonight. I probably won't get to a tough matchup against the Knicks. I did want to ask Desmond Bain, if he's in, I think is interesting, but I think he's listed as questionable. And yeah, if he's out, I guess Jaren Jackson's going to kind of be tough to get away from. But Definitely going to be some blowout risk in that game if there is no Desmond Bane. I don't know if we got that news yet, but before we hopped on, I did see he was listed as questionable on the injury report, which is a little bit surprising to me.
Yeah, I was actually taking a look at Desmond Bain, and just 1 and 2% ownership. Wasn't he chalk last slate for like $300 less? I know it's a different slate, but it's not a tough matchup against Houston. So if he does play, I don't think he's a bad GPP play. Jaren Jackson went off last game,
Yeah.
and you love that when he's low owned and Bain's the chalk. And Bain had an okay game, but Jaren Jackson had a tournament winning game. And then okay, I thought we got a notification. Other guy I wanted to mention, Keldon Johnson, back under 7K on both sites, along the same lines of Wemby. If he's playing a battered Lakers team, really like him as a GPP play at lowish ownership. Chris Middleton, we had a question in chat. Thought Chris Middleton would be chalk. Yeah, I mean, Nick mentioned that he likes Chris Middleton at this price, 65, 6,600 at less than 10% ownership. I mean, I'm going to have a few shares of Chris Middleton in my exposures tonight for sure.
Yeah, I love Middleton. We kind of let off with the games we liked, and he's definitely a piece of that game I want to get some of. And Jaime Haka is still no ownership on him coming off the bench here. Again, no Josh Richardson tonight on top of the absence of Hero and Bam. So more minutes for Jaime, who looks really solid here at 57 and 5,500 respectively between the two sites. But yeah, I mean, we kind of started the show with those guys coming full circle now as we get to these forwards. I think at those ownerships, those are probably two of my favorite GPP plays. Again, Middleton against Indiana, I think he should play close to 30 minutes here. I know we're only projecting him for around 26, and he still looks okay in the model, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some extra run. Hasn't been playing back to back, so they're slowly giving him more minutes. We saw him get over 30 in the in-season tournament, and then Jaquez again coming off the bench. Surprised he's not more popular in this matchup. And again, if Miami were to blow out Charlotte, which is not something I'm expecting, I still think Hawkins gets his run late in the game. So pretty safe option coming off the bench, in my opinion.
And then Anson in the chat asking about Caleb Martin. Maybe you tuned in right after we discussed him, but we both think he's fine. I mean, the price is uncomfortable for sure, but without Josh Richardson tonight, I mean, he's been crushing, and it's a good matchup against Charlotte. I do think the ownership is slightly high, but I don't mind it. But I do think that we kind of should like Jaime Jaquez as the pivot off of Caleb Martin. Not that he's directly going to impact him since he's probably going to come off the bench anyway, but
Right.
I think that's a good one. And then at a similar price, Asar Thompson back in the starting lineup. Now, he had a really good game last time, and he was way too cheap. He's a little bit more expensive today, but I think he shot 8 for 10 from the field. And so that's not something that we should expect from him every night. But I mean, we're playing Asar for the rebounding floor, for the stocks floor. And so I don't mind him as a tournament play tonight, even though they're playing against Philadelphia. It is a tough matchup.
Yeah,
And
no, I think that's a good call. I'm wondering, did you hear what Gilbert Arenas was saying about him?
yeah, if he's not averaging 10 points or whatever as a
If
20
your
year old.
20-year-old's not averaging 10 points, and then like someone retweeted it with a list of guys that were 20, like Jokic was averaging 8 points a game, and like I don't know, they went through like all the All Stars last year. Barely any of them were. It's just funny that these guys are like talking like they know things, but
If I'm not
yeah,
mistaken, Gilbert did not average 10
I don't
points
even
when
think
he
he
was
did
20.
either.
He was a second round pick. So
Yeah, man. So I don't know. Just I like Oscar the player and his brother too. I'm hoping he gets a few more minutes here coming up as he gets healthy too. But yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, that game with Philly, I think no one's going to want to go to these Pistons because they're worried about the matchup and the blowout. But it does have a high total. If they were able to keep it close even for 3 quarters, I think we could see a lot of these guys hitting value, like Cunningham, Thompson, Bogdanovich. They're all fine. But again, I think no one wants to play them against Philly right now.
yeah, it's funny seeing like how many slates we've had Pistons chalk, but this probably isn't the game to do it. And it's like, okay, what if they keep it close? I mean, what's the spread in this game? 11 and a half. It's close to blowout territory, but it's like, it's so tough. I mean, Bojan's right here too, and he had a pretty poor game. 6,900 on DraftKings. His price is coming up, but 63 on FanDuel seems pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Herbert Jones in this mid range is coming in as chalk, but I get it against Washington. I mean, we play
I
Herb
get
Jones
it.
for the stock variance, and Washington turns the ball over a lot. So I don't hate that there. And we had a question about Trey Murphy tonight. So his minutes have been kind of capped. We haven't projected for 29 minutes though, and he is pulling a little bit of ownership, but I think the price is good. He has a ceiling, and without Zion, he should have a better chance of reaching it. So I don't mind Trey Murphy tonight as a play.
Yeah, even a few extra minutes for him is going to be big. He has been solid in the minutes he's been getting, so I like that. And it looks like he's actually the most popular play on FanDuel. So I think in low risk contests, he's going to be tough to get away from.
And then Matty Ape asking about core plays for FanDuel. We'll go through the ownerships and talk about some core plays, but we're going to go through the centers first. Was there another forward you wanted to talk about before we moved on?
No, I think we can move on. I think we hit on most of them.
Yeah, I think we all the relevant guys anyway. And now yesterday's centers, I talked about they were terrible, but today's centers we have probably too many good options. Giannis power forward eligible. We mostly want to play him in the power forward spot. It seems like a two center night though. So who's your top center? Top few center plays, I guess, tonight.
Yeah, I mean, number one has to be Jovel. Again, no Zion. That's going to increase his rebounding and usage. And the other good thing for Jovel here is still no Larry Nance. And we know that his minutes are more secure whenever Nance isn't available. They're not rushing to get to Zeller as a backup. So I really, really do like Jovel here. It's interesting. I'm surprised Richards is as popular as he was, given how he burnt everyone last slate in this exact same matchup. But I do like getting to him again. But someone a little bit lower owned is actually going to be Clint Capella. I know we're playing a ton of Toronto Raptors tonight. I think one of the easier pieces to get to in terms of point per dollar is going to be Capella. Toronto is a bigger team. We've seen minutes of him with a Congo on the floor at times. So I think his minutes floor is actually climbing. I know we're projecting him right around 28. I think that's about right, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him get over 30 in this matchup. So Capella is a really solid option, but I also do like Richards and Joel as chalk. Those are probably my top three right now.
Yeah, I like all those guys. And we have, for some reason, I thought this was an 11 game slate. I think it's only a 9 game slate today. But we had a question. I think this is what threw me off. Zeke Naji love. Zeke Naji is not playing today. And usually the answer on that one is just going to be a no, regardless of the matchup, even if
Did he
Jokic
get
is
traded
out.
or something? Or
Yeah, I
I'm
had to
like,
Google him real quick and make sure I wasn't. No, I think that's maybe the Denver's playing tomorrow a little different, or maybe he's
yeah,
confused with someone. We'll see who the player he meant to talk about was. But yeah, I mean, I agree with basically everything that Nick said, and I just Brooke Lopez, Jakob Pertl showing up near the top of the model. I don't think we have to get cute with center today, so I think we could pretty much keep it simple. I mean, it's kind of interesting how low Joel Embiid is on value. I know he has the super high OF index, but centers crushed Detroit. It's probably going to be a blowout. We don't predict blowouts. Vegas has it somewhat close. I'm actually surprised it's only a. Am I misreading? Oh, okay, 11.5. I mean, it's not that big of a spread, but just how does Detroit keep this game close, right?
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a road game, so maybe that's why it's not wider. But when you really think about it, that's pretty damn wide. So I think, yeah, we're fine not getting to Embiid. But I will say this: he has gotten there at three quarters before. If they do blow them out, he's probably hitting 60 to 7 fantasy points. So if you can afford him, feel free. It's just we're waiting on a lot of news in these games at 8 o'clock, primarily the Lakers game. If you lock in all that salary on someone like Embiid, it's going to be really, really tough to late swap.
Yeah, and we have a plethora of mid-range centers to play today, and so I don't think Embiid is necessary. I say that he puts up 80 fantasy points, but
Right.
we have a lot of options today, and so the last few slates we've talked about, we either want to go cheap or we want to just pay up for Embiid, Jokic. I don't think that's the case today. I think we can play basically almost everybody on this list. The Lakers news is probably going to throw a wrench in this because we're going to have to play Jackson Hayes, which is disgusting. But we'll see when we get that news. And he was talking about Najee Marshall, not Zeke Najee.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, I like the player. I'll say that first and foremost. But yeah, he was out for a while, hurt. I think he's been back for a couple weeks now. Hasn't been great. Hasn't been playing a lot of minutes. In the games he is getting minutes, he's been pushing value. I think you could use him as a punt here because there's a few ways he gets there. I mean, he's going to be part of the rotation. I think if this game gets out of hand, he could still see increased minutes. Not someone I'd say you could play in like a cash game or a low risk contest, but on a slate where we don't have a ton of value under 4K, I think he's not terrible. But yeah, I can't say he's safe.
Yeah, I actually, on a slate that we're star for value, I definitely see why you're interested in playing Najee Marshall. With Zion out, Trey Murphy is back, so it's possible that Najee Marshall won't see the 20 plus minutes. But I think he does have the potential to play 20 plus minutes if he's playing very well. Maybe he gets some blowout run. And so on a slate where we really don't have anyone in this price range that we're super interested in, playing him at like 1% owned, I
Yeah.
mean, you're going to get this guy at low ownership who could have a good game, and then your lineup build is just going to be so much different than most of the field, just based on the fact that you're getting a low owned guy who did well. So I don't mind it. Glad you mentioned that. Actually, I wasn't really thinking about him, but that
Yeah,
seems
good
like a
call.
pretty good one. And Sims. So let's talk. We had a question about Hartenstein, so let's go ahead and take a look at the Knicks.
Yeah.
So I played a lot of Sims on the last slate, and he had an okay game. It's like if I got every other roster spot correct, then I could have finished near the top. I didn't, but we're assuming Sims starts again. They did sign Taj Gibson today. I don't think he's going to be ready to play yet. And yeah, don't you love it?
Tibbs, man, he's nothing but loyal. I mean, he's loyal to his guys. Uh, but God, dude, honestly, Hartenstein's a good player, and like I don't know why he's so terrified to start him or give him extended minutes. If I'm playing either of these guys, even though he's way more expensive, even though he's coming off the bench, it is going to be Hartenstein for me. Like I'm never rushing to play Sims. Like I kind of see him the same as Grimes was in that lineup, even though he was a shooting guard. Like the usage just isn't there for him. Especially next to Randall. Like Randall just kind of big brothers up for boards. But yeah, I mean, coming off the bench, I don't mind Hartenstein. They did raise his price. I think he's much easier to get to on FanDuel, even though he's 1K more because you have that power forward eligibility. I think there are too many quality centers tonight for me to want to get to either of these guys. But yeah, I mean, at the price, Sims does make some sense. It's just not a play I like. And I don't know, man. Tibbs bringing in Taj Gibson just tells me even more that he's not trusting Hartenstein, which seems just insane to me. Like, you could afford to have him in there next to Randall.
And we have Ken in the chat. You know, Taj Gibson going to turn the season around, and it's like it's funny, but it's really not that far off from what. Like, I mean, Taj Gibson, he's a vet, and they already have Julius. They just need some kind of enforcer in there, and so.
Dude, they're gonna sign Derrick Rose when Memphis cuts him at some point. Who
Oh,
else? Tibbs has his guys, man, and he's always had his guys. Taj Gibson is the guy, though. I don't know. It's just insane. Like,
we're gonna get questions in a week like Taj Gibson or Hardenstein. It's like I don't
uh,
even just move on to the next day.
yeah, I know. Just less Knicks may be better, but I mean, Randall's been so damn good in that front court. Like, he's just kind of overshadowing most of these guys anyway.
While we're on the Knicks, I do want to mention RJ Barrett came in for very low ownership last time. I thought he was a really good play, and I was kind of shocked how low he came. And he's still similar price, 6,300 at pretty low ownership. I think he's a really good GPP play tonight as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good call, especially low ownership. Makes plenty of sense.
And just wait until Gibson is starting at 3K. It's the sad thing is I already know I'm going to be playing him, so we do what we do.
It's a nightmare, but yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
And Barry Jones, do we approach single entry like GPP? Nick, you've been focusing on the single entries on FanDuel a little bit. Do you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the size of your contest. Like, if you're playing a really big contest, yes, it's GPP, but it's kind of like a hybrid. Like, you're playing a low risk lineup kind of mixed with a high risk lineup, if that makes sense. So, you want to sort by ownership, see who's really popular. You're going to want to be playing most of those guys, but kind of pick your spots. Like, find pivots off a few of them that you're a little bit less comfortable with, and usually that you're fine. Like, what I do when I build is usually I build one lineup that I love with a lot of chalk, and then I make small iterations off of it. Then I'm actually just doing a 20 max on FanDuel, I think. So what I'll do is I'll build my one lineup that I really like. It's almost going to be a cash build. I'll play it in that contest, and then I'm going to make small variations off of it. I think the best way to do single entry is almost build a cash lineup and then just make 2 or 3 pivots off some of the chalk you don't love, chase some of the upside you do love, and usually you don't need to get that different to climb those leaderboards. But again, you want to play it safe. You got to eat some chalk. You don't want all your guys to be low owned. But at the same time, I think people make the mistake often of trying to get too different in those contests. They miss out on good chalk, and NBA, again, is the most projectable of all the sports. So I know there's nights where some of the chalk doesn't hit, but more often than not, it does. So I think over the course of the season, you're going to want to eat more of it than maybe you feel comfortable with. But again, just make 2 or 3 pivots, get a couple low owned guys, and you should be fine.
Yeah, and I approach it pretty similarly. Usually on most slates, there is a low owned guy that I like, and so I'll basically just play him and a bunch of chalk in a single entry, and that's enough. And like with single entries, keep in mind you get one entry, especially if there's hundreds of players in it. Like if you win a single entry contest once in a season, that's a good result. Most players won't.
Yeah.
So we can't expect to win single entries often. Like we can expect to cash more often than the 1 out of 5 average, but like taking down a single entry, it's still really hard, even though everyone only gets one.
Yeah, yeah. I've had a few top fives this year. No binks yet. My bink actually came in at 20 max. So yeah, still chasing the single entry takedown this year. But like I said, I mean, I mix it up slate to slate on a night like tonight where I like a ton of centers. Like that's why I'm going with more lineups. Another reason is just the way we schedule. Like when I'm doing the Discord, I only can do single entry. I really can't build 20 lineups and feel good about them. So I just lower my volume, play 1 or 2 lineups, and do it that way. Like the content schedule helps me kind of dictate where I go. But tonight, we're going to have that half hour when the guys are going to be in Discord helping out. So I can use that half hour to get my lineups built. And there's a ton of centers I like. I think I want to have some flexibility with that Lakers game. Going to definitely make some pivots off the obvious. So good night for a few more, in my opinion.
And that's one thing about focusing on just a couple lineups. You can really plan out how your late swaps are going to go. You know, if AD's ruled out, we're swapping in Hayes at center and we're swapping in this player at this position with the extra salary. So,
Exactly.
best value plays on DraftKings under 5K. Let's go ahead and get into that. So, I think the two best, they're not under 5K, but Schroeder and OG were the first ones that came to mind. They're 6K and I think 5,800 for OG and Anunoby. I mean, they're the two highest plays on the slate, or
Yeah.
highest owned plays on a DraftKings. So I think we should be interested there. Pirtle and Herb Jones, not quite under 5K either, but yeah, value scarce today. I mean, Gary Trent at 4K, he's the highest owned guy that's, you know, considered value, and I don't love that. I don't mind him as a GPP play, but if the rest of the field is going to get there heavily, I don't really know if I want to do that. There's just not a lot of there is just no value over on DraftKings. I mean, Isaiah Jackson and Trendon Watford are showing up near 10% at 41 and 33, and I like Trendon Watford. 3,300 sounds great, but it just, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I mean, who shouted out the MOG father, Najee Marshall, really climbing in ownership now, 3,600. It's going to be pretty popular as value, so I think getting to him makes a lot of sense. And again, just over 5K, Nick Richards, a little bit surprised he's as popular as he is. I was hoping the field would sour on him, but I think at his price, he's fine. He did play as many minutes as usual last time. I'm a bit confused by the result, why he had such a bad game. But yeah, I'm fine going back there. Again, this matchup isn't terrible with no Bam.
And just sorting the model, filtering to max salary of 5,100 on DraftKings and sorting by value. I mean, it is Nick Richards at the top 5,100. Bobby Portis, I think, is a decent play against Indiana if you want to get exposure to this game environment. Branham for San Antonio, it's not the worst play. Not someone, it's probably not going to show up for me today.
Yeah, I'm
Batum,
not
Josh
crazy about
Hart,
Brandon. Yeah.
THT. Obi Toppin is a player that I've been over the field on basically every time. I really don't mind him as a GPP play, especially in this game environment today. And I mean, the rest of these guys are just guys like Simone Fontecchio had a really good game last time. With Markkanen back, it's going to be tougher, but Clarkson's out still. So, you know, maybe he's a consideration. Dylan Brooks is someone who I was playing heavily to start the season, not so much anymore. It's
Revenge
just
for him
tough.
tonight too, but he's already played Memphis once. Um, I did actually in one of my builds earlier today. I had Brooks just because he's really cheap. Again, not going to be surprised if he takes 20 shots here against Memphis. Uh, because he's that type of guy. Yeah, that's something you could feel good about. But we have seen ceiling games out of him where he's hitting over 30 fantasy points. I think sub 5K at no ownership. It's the least appealing game on the slate in terms of total. But yeah, as a last guy in, I don't think Dylan Brooks is insane at a pretty thin small forward position.
And Torian Prince 4,500. Don't hate it.
That
I
could
don't.
get really good if AD or Braun are out too. Prince.
Yeah, and if we do get that news, he's going to stay low owned no matter what happens. Like, I mean, maybe he comes up to 4 or 5% something, but he's basically an unknown value play. And then that shout from the chat, Najee Marshall, I think it's pretty decent. We mentioned TJ McConnell and Isaiah Jackson to start the show. Kelly Olynyk was chalk last time, right? And he didn't perform, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
Laurie and Kessler are back tonight, so that kind of takes Kelly O out of
okay,
consideration. Yeah,
okay, and
but
then
Sexton there if you do need a piece from
yep.
Utah for cheap.
Yep, mentioned Sexton. Jose Alvarado, 3,800, 4,100. Model doesn't think so, but I don't mind taking some shots on him. He has some especially if he gets a blowout. If they end up blowing out Washington, I mean, it's only a 7 point spread, but like I said, Washington does turn the ball over, and some of Jose Alvarado's points
That's
are
a
going to
good
come
one.
from that steal move that he does, where he just
I
sits in the
love the
corner.
match. Yep. And especially on FanDuel where you get the extra points for steals. Really good matchup for Alvarado, actually. And maybe he gets a few of these extra Zion minutes. I don't know that to be a fact at all. But yeah, I mean, if McCollum moves down to the two, everyone kind of moves down one spot. We've seen a lot of positionless basketball. And maybe Alvarado actually benefits more than maybe anyone's projecting him to right now because, yeah, he's coming off a game where he only played 14 minutes. We've seen him get over 20, though. And this matchup is gold for a guy who gets a lot of steals.
And cheap price, no one's on him. I like it.
That's a
And
good call.
let's try and get a little bit of a FanDuel core before we just build a very quick DraftKings dummy. I mean, Herb Jones, Jalen Brunson, OG. I mean, honestly, the top of ownership is pretty strong for a core, even though they're the most owned players.
Yeah, Ingram, Joval. I do think Brunson's underpriced, sub 8K. I don't think that makes any sense at all. But yeah, OG's fine. But yeah, definitely New Orleans is really where you're starting your builds tonight.
And if we want to mix in a couple like guys under 20%, I think Bojan Bogdanovic is fine. We just got confirmation it's the same starting lineup that the Pistons threw out last time: Cunningham, Hayes, Bojan Bogdanovic, Asar Thompson, and then Isaiah Stewart starting at center. Spencer Dinwiddie, kind of low owned. Don't mind him over on FanDuel.
Cam was cheap over there too from that same game. Cam
Mm-hmm.
Thomas.
I don't
And
want to
yeah,
get.
no, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I don't want to get like too deep into like low owned guys for the core, but it does seem like there's some spots that we can take advantage of. Just like looking through these ownerships here, a lot of these guys in this 5K range. Terry
Yeah,
Rozier is good price,
if Buddy Hield starts 5,800, too cheap.
and there was something. No, we got that starting lineup. All right, so on DraftKings, who's the first player in our builds? Is it like Schroeder and OG or one or the other?
Um, I think one of the. I mean, I wanted to say Ingram, but yeah, I think you could go with either of those two as well. Yeah, go Schroeder, OG, and Ingram is the first three in. I think.
Schroeder, OG, Ingram, and let's see what kind of salary it leaves us. Do we want to get a little bit wild with one of those super value plays? I'm kind of talking myself into a lot of Alvarado now.
Yeah, you kind of talked me into him too. I can just see him getting 4 steals against Kuz and Poole and these guys who like to play loose. So yeah, why not?
It's going to be a little tough. OG Anunoby, for some reason, does not have small forward eligibility. I guess Brandon Ingram does. So we'll do Schroeder, OG, and then Ingram at the small forward spot. And then we'll put Jose Alvarado in the guard spot. A little bit of salary relief.
I like it.
Which center is your favorite?
I mean, the chalk is Jovel. I think he makes sense. Otherwise, Capella, but it's tough to get away from Jovel. I think at 67.
Let's do it. Joval. Other pivot options. I like Brook Lopez a lot tonight, and Capella. They're both in
Yeah,
the
they're
same
both
price range. I think they're all great.
power
Power
forward.
forward. I don't think we want to go with the fourth Pelican, Najee Marshall, but he's fine if maybe you're fading Ingram for some reason.
If we have a lot of salary, we could go up to Randall.
Let's try Randall, and then I think AD is sitting today. Do we want to throw in Jackson Hayes in the utility spot?
Yeah, just make sure everyone watching knows that we got to keep an eye on that lineup. And if Hayes not starting, maybe don't use him here. But yeah, otherwise he makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, basically whoever's starting at center, I don't think they can go Vanderbilt just because they need him to go up against Wemby. And we did get Desmond Bain ruled out right now. The model's not going to update in time for us to really dive into it, but just let's take a look at Memphis real quick.
Yeah.
Santi Aldama started last game. I think the 6K price is still okay for him. He had a couple blow up games and then he kind of returned back to earth. But like, I don't know who Bain being out really benefits. Like Noel might be on the court for a while. Conchar, like Jaren Jackson's, the obvious thing, but like this team is.
Jackson. Yeah, I mean Jackson's going to benefit the most. Rose is going to see increased usage, but the thing with Rose is you're not going to get extra minutes out of him. I think the biggest boost, other than Jackson, is probably Aldama. I will say one punt who's probably going to get no ownership is going to be Vince Williams. If he moves into the rotation, I've been playing him wherever I can. I mean, he's very much boomer bust, but we've seen some big ceiling games out of him. Again, we're struggling to find guys sub 5K tonight. I think he makes some sense. But yeah, I mean, I do trust Jackson here if you do need a piece from this one. After that, it's probably Aldama, then Roddy, but I don't know that I trust Roddy. The price is appealing, though. But yeah, man, it's a really low total game. So like, if you're not getting to Memphis, I wouldn't feel too terrible about it.
Right. Yeah. This is not like the Pelican situation where they have actual good players at good prices that we want to play. So don't feel like
Right.
we have to get there. They'll be lowish owned, and I do like that Vince Williams call.
Yeah. And if the game were to blow out, I think Williams could still get run into the fourth too. Again, he's risky. He's not going to be safe, but anytime he's getting extra minutes, he has been pushing value. So Fitz Williams is someone I have an eye on.
And so this build leaves us 7,300. I mean, one thing we could do, we could put in Brooke Lopez instead of Joe Val, and that gives
Yeah.
us the salary to get up to Jaren Jackson Jr. I mean, Keldon Johnson, 6,900. Bojan Bogdanovic, 6,900 is a little high, but I think he's okay as a deep GPP play. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can do here, but the Lakers news is going to be significant, so it's going to be hard to plan for it. I do think AD's sitting. I kind of feel like LeBron's sitting just based on the spread, but we didn't get the news before the stream ended, so it's actually good for us if you're planning these things out beforehand. Then you don't have to make as many changes. You have more flexibility to take advantage of the news. So just watch Twitter. Show in our Discord. Someone's definitely going to talk about it. So, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Nope. It does look like Jayhawk will be in Discord if he's not already. Again, the Lakers news is pivotal. I mean, things could change really quickly. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on starting lineups tonight as well as the news. I mean, the Memphis lineup could be something totally different. Yeah, make sure Buddy Hield's starting. I think he's a good play if he's starting for Indiana. Pretty much just your advantage tonight is to stay near your computer. So if you have plans, maybe just play some guys in the early games because this is a night you're going to want to pivot.
Definitely. And I don't think Jaime Jaquez was showing up this high at the top of value, but now he is. Still projected for really low ownership.
We're
34
ahead of the
minutes is
curve.
super high, but yeah, we'll leave you on that note. Jaime Jaquez, great value play.
Go,
So
Jaime, go.
appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. We will see you tomorrow.
Take care.